easily for this time of year. Usually, people are getting pretty frustrated being in the building for so long. They're tired of the cold weather. They'd like to get out and about. And we are continuing to serve around 100 individuals every night in the main shelter on Broadway. We also are still serving over 100 individuals every night in the emergency winter shelter at the Johnson Street shelter. For those of you that don't know our statistics from this year compared to last year we served an average of 70 individuals every night, and there were a couple nights where it was really cold where we served over 100 individuals. And in comparison, this year, aside from the first couple of nights of the season, we have served over 100 individuals every night this winter, and it has gotten up to around 165 the nights when it was really cold. We know that it has been announced that the Johnson Street shelter will close on April 10th. So, the homeless outreach team, I think Tanisha or Katie will talk a little bit about how the homeless outreach team is preparing for that. I know we'll talk more about that in our next neighborhood meeting for the Johnson Street shelter also, if anyone wants to join that neighborhood meeting. But aside from that, I'm happy to take any questions about the Poverello or the Johnson Street shelter, but those are our updates.
Hi, Jill. This is John Wolverton. I wondered,
hey, John.
what's the, are you moving the capacity of the POB on Broadway up? Getting back up to pre-COVID levels?
Yeah, we have moved it up. We're serving up to about 130 individuals. Our capacity pre-COVID was 150. So we're still trying to get back to that 150. Really what happened is that pandemic lasted 3 years. And so we need to replace some beds and things that just got old and used during the pandemic that we, weren't in need of because we weren't serving as many people. So we're working on getting the supplies necessary to be able to get back up to 150, but we're at least 75% capacity right now.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
I think also, I just want to say if there's any questions related to the Johnson Street shelter closing, that now would be the time to ask. We do have some city council members here, and it would be a good time for any questions related to that shelter closing, if anyone has any.
I will have a follow-up to that, Jill. It's John Wolverton again. What I already asked. When the veterans program moves over to the Clark Fork Inn, what do you anticipate happening to the numbers at the main building?
Yeah, we anticipate. Yep, we are still looking at how we're going to use that space, but we're definitely going to use it. Currently, it's housing up to 20 veterans, and so we're looking to see. We know that we can at least increase our capacity by 20, or keep it at the same, right? Because the numbers are flush. So 150 to 150. If we move 20 out, we're moving 20 back in, but we would be able to serve another 20 of the general population that are not veterans. But it could be that we use that in less of a private way. So it could be, there could be four people to a room instead of 2, which would increase our capacity by 40. We're just not sure yet exactly how that space will be utilized.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like maybe James has a question. James, can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Ooh.
No, not you, James. Not you, James. It looks like there's a different James.
There's James. It's right next to me. James Capel, it's your turn, isn't it?
No, there's 3 of you Jameses on here tonight.
Another James.
I know.
Here we go. Maybe I got this. Maybe I got the right James this time.
I'll have to leave soon.
So,
James, oh, no last name. Hey,
James, are you able to ask a question?
Am I on?
Yes.
You are.
I was wondering in reference to the Johnson Center, there's some debris, or I should say more than some debris along that fence line there on North Street. And now that the snow has cleared, is that going to be, who maintains or cleans that up? I say that because I walk that trail, and every once in a while there's a gentleman from the university area that comes over with his sack to, well, he was there just on Saturday. He walks around, picks up a sack full and then leaves. And there's still, I was wondering how that gets handled.
Yeah, I think we try to keep up with that, especially like you say in the winter, it, ends up being underneath the snow as it, melts. I could not tell you the date, but we do have a neighborhood cleanup scheduled in that area at the time, around the time that the shelter is going to close. We have a group of volunteers that are all going to come together and really try to, spread out into the neighborhood area to get it cleaned up really well at the end of the season.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl, you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering if there's any validity or if there was something passed. I'm being told by the clientele at Johnson Street that the staff is telling them that something's been passed that they're allowed to camp on city property. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know, past, you mean at a city level, or I don't know?
Yeah, they said they're being told by staff that something was passed at City Hall and having to do with that Oregon case. And so that's where they're all headed, is city property.
Oh, like Gwen.
They're already headed out.
Yeah, the city council has not passed anything new. I'll put it that way. The Boise case and then the subsequent case in the Ninth Circuit that apply to Montana, since we're in the Ninth Circuit. My understanding, they hold that if we do not have a sufficiently habitable place for folks to go to, then they can stay in the public right of way. However, we do have some sideboards if they create a health hazard. That is a tool that we use at times to move people along to clean up an area. So it is kind of squishy, but that's the law. And maybe Jill, you can explain it better than I. But basically, we will have a lot of new things coming online in the next 6 to 10 months with Trinity and Bellagio, and I'm hoping that makes an impact and we get some more folks housed. I anticipate we will still have a population that is not housed. The crisis levy did not pass, so we do not have that tool to address this in the future. And I think this summer we're going to be seeing unhoused people across Missoula, and they will be more visible. But it's also a national problem, and frankly, every city in Montana has the same problem in varying magnitude, and we are not an outlier. So if they're heading to city property, that I understand. I think they're talking about the city right of way, basically. But also it at a certain level has to work for everybody else too. People need to be able to pass on sidewalks, and they cannot have a health hazard, cannot have feces and needles and things like this going on. So that's about as best as I can describe it. And I know there's 2 other city councilors, Mike Nugent, Mirta Becerra. I don't know if you guys want to chime in and supplement what I said, but that's my understanding.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else to add. I think Gwen covered it pretty well. I think those 2 pieces of legislation that are part of the Ninth Circuit are pretty much guiding everything that city can do and city police. But our tool is whenever that becomes a public health and safety concern, our police department works, I think, directly with someone from the health department to ensure that that situation is not causing health issues and concerns to the rest of the community. So I would say that if you see something like that, happening that still using the same ways of communicating. By that, I mean calling police department, I think is they prioritize and send the appropriate person to deal with the situation.
Excuse me, I gotta leave quickly, but can I see this tonight later on your website? You're recording this right now.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I have another opportunity I can get to. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Jane.
And I would just add to what Councilwoman Jones and Sarah have said, with most of the additional services the last several years that the city's helped fund have been through ARPA funding. And with those funds kind of, coming to the end of their course and the crisis service levy not passing, we are in a little bit of a new era, and we're going to have to kind of see how we move forward. And that's the collective we as the nonprofit world, the city, the county, and figure out what's working and how to support it. But we don't have all the answers right now by any stretch.
Yeah, and I think, the way that we think of it is very similar to what Gwen was saying, that, you can't make it illegal to camp, especially when there's no shelter spaces. And so right now there's enough shelter spaces if people were to come and seek shelter, but after April 10th, there will not be. And so also, like Gwen said, we will see more people out camping. But I think the homeless outreach team does, a really good job of working with people. They work with Parks and Rec. They work with the people that are living unsheltered. They take them gear so they can survive. They encourage them to keep a small footprint, I guess, if you would say, and keep areas clean as much as possible. And take garbage bags, things like that, to try to help. We just know there's not enough shelter space for everyone to have a place to sleep, and we don't know when there will be again. John?
This question for Jill. You've heard me mention this before. I use the term like neighborhood aftercare. It's like when it closes, people kind of scatter in the neighborhood, but they become kind of comfortable in the area. And there can be ongoing concerns with that, or trash accumulations and stuff. And I think the previous 2 seasons, your hot team stayed in the building, or at least the previous season, and that seemed to help that the hot team was around more often. Is that going to happen again this year? Are they staying in the building a while?
Yeah, we don't have, we haven't heard from the city who owns the building in Johnson Street that we need to move any, administrative staff out. And so we do have the homeless outreach team that is housed in that building, and then also our development staff. So Stephanie, who's on this call, and Sarah, that's on this call, have offices in that building. And like you said, I think that is really helpful. Rather than having an empty building, they kind of, have a pulse on what's going on, if there's people hanging around outside, and, can visit with people and encourage them to move along if that's the case. So, yep, that's our plan still.
And this is kind of a follow-on to that, probably for our city officials. We had one very modest notification go out there on neighborhood channels that the TSOS residents were going to temporarily relocate. It's like late April and May, but it didn't ring true to me because I used the term construction. Does anybody know what's going on there? The TSOS needs to be finished up or something like that?
I believe the county runs that, so I am not in the loop, but does anybody else? Oh, Jill.
I know.
Jill does,
Yeah. So basically, the temporary safe outdoor space, when they moved to the new location where they are now off of Mullen, they could move all of their pallet structures there, but they couldn't finish like the pavement and those things because it was too cold. And so basically what they need to do is move their residents that are currently living at the temporary safe outdoor space to a location while construction workers come in, get that pavement and whatever. I think they need to put up some poles for electrical, things like that. And it's like 2 to 3 weeks they're estimating that will take. And so they reached out to us well, they reached out to the city and asked if they could use the building, and then coordinated with us on time. So they'll come in, I think it sounds like we don't have for sure dates, but towards the end of April, or beginning of May, for just 2 to 3 weeks, they'll have staff on site 24/7. And they're just going to allow those individuals a place to be while they're finishing up that construction site, and then getting back to it, all permanently done. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I think any other questions? If not, maybe we can let
Yes.
oh,
One more from Kevin Davis, or a couple of
Yeah.
questions, if that's okay. Hi, Jill.
sure. Hi.
Maybe I could start with city councilors, and I'm assuming they have to leave for their 6 o'clock meeting. Is that right?
Not
No
tonight.
meeting this week.
There's not one.
Oh,
Thanks. That's good to know. Okay, so maybe time for a couple questions. When was and this is for anyone, when was the April 10th closing date of the Johnson Street shelter announced?
I know that in the last week, a press announcement went out from the city. And in prior years, I want to say it's been the end of March, early April. So this was a specific date that was announced recently.
Okay, it seems sudden, and some of you are on an email thread I was on today where we're trying to react to some pre-existing unauthorized camping. And I just want to be clear, there's an impression from tonight's meeting that we'll be seeing more camping rather than less camping, and we're already, as a community, addressing some of that unauthorized camping. So that is certainly a factor, and I guess a concern.
Well, I agree with you, Kevin, and I really wish the crisis levy had passed because it would have given us better tools, but here we are.
And so with that crisis levy and with not much warning for the occupants of the Johnson Street shelter, where are they being directed to go for after, between now and April 10 and after?
yeah. So Kevin, just to let you know, we initially had said that we were going to have the emergency winter shelter through the end of March. It didn't look like we would have enough funding to be able to go any longer than that, which was unfortunate because we know that there's always one last winter storm the beginning of April. So when we looked at finances and looked at, how much money we had spent on emergency winter shelter so far this year, it looked like we could stay open an additional 10 days in hopes. We don't know, we can't tell what Mother Nature is going to do, but in hopes that we can stay open through whatever last minute winter weather we get. And so really that April 10th date is 10 days later than what we had initially thought we would be staying open. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. I think our messaging to our clients has already begun, and we're already letting them know that unfortunately the emergency winter shelter is closing, and that there's not an authorized camping site this year. And so I think that's the question of the day. There isn't anywhere for people to go. And like Gwen said, the crisis levy didn't pass. And so there is not funding for the city to fund or for the Poverello to fund winter shelter or year-round shelter, which is really needed at this point.
Okay, for a couple of follow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So April 10th is, in your estimation, later than you've expected. I can tell you from me and those of us just, average citizens in the private sector, we were under the impression there was federal funding through June of this year. So April to us seems a little bit early. And then again, a follow-up, where are those folks being directed? So there's nowhere for them to go. Is that what I'm hearing?
On the federal funding part, I mean, I can do the best I can. I think maybe that's confusing because of the city's fiscal year, budget fiscal year, but basically from the beginning of messaging, the Poverello has said that we would be open until the end of March. So I'm not sure where the confusion came on that, but it could be because the city's fiscal year ends the end of June. And I think we do the best, but it's really hard to give people a place to go when there isn't a place to go. I think the homeless outreach team will tell them to come to the Poverello Center. We know that we cannot sleep every person that needs shelter at the Poverello Center. I think they will refer them to the temporary safe outdoor space. And we also know that that space is many times full and has a waiting list. They'll also refer them and have been working with many of them to get into housing in, the Trinity complex, which has, 200 units coming online at different times this year, where some of them we are hoping will be able to be housed. And so there are possibilities, but not a possibility for like tomorrow, if that makes sense, and not a possibility that's guaranteed. As the Poverello Center operates on a lottery system every night.
Yeah, and I would add, we've never messaged that I'm aware of that would be open until June. So I'm not sure where you got that piece of information. The last couple of years, it's always been the end of March and into.
Sorry, just to be clear, yeah, I didn't say open until June. I said federal funding until June. So sorry for that misinterpretation. And I'll step away, but thank everyone for your work. I will say this is my first meeting of this sort, and it's disconcerting to hear the news tonight. And I'm sorry there aren't a lot of answers, and it seems to be that there's more bad news than good news for our homeless neighbors. And as I've expressed in emails, and those of you I've worked with, more of us want to help. And we're looking to our leaders for answers and for solutions to things like pre-existing unauthorized camping that existed through the winter. And now we're hearing tonight that there may be more unauthorized camping on the horizon. So that's more for volunteers like us to help try to keep safe and clean in the area. So the more answers, the better. We're going to be looking to you for that. And I, for one, am available to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that a news, a letter went out to all the news professionals on Thursday from our city communications director, letting everyone know that the shelter would be closing April 10. And I think that confusion about the funding, I think we've always known that our COVID funds were going to run out in April, but I think the confusion might be that our fiscal year doesn't end in April.
Yeah, and I will say, since we're all here, I don't think we have a lot of clarity. I don't think we have a lot of answers at this point, because the tools that we've tried to use, like the crisis levy, that we didn't wind up getting that tool. So we've got ARPA dollars through this April 10th closure date. We're going to have a very, very difficult budget session this summer, because we've got some sideboards that are pinching us in terms of our revenue for the city. So we have, this certainly is a priority, but when I've got so many priorities in the city that we've got to fund and limited resources, that's hard. And I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. And for me, frankly, I'm looking ahead to November 1st. Summer is hard and we want people safely housed, but winter is harder than summer. So that is a bigger priority. So to just kind of paint the picture here, we'll be having budget talks this summer. I'm not sure how that's going to go or what resources we're going to have, but we'll do the best we can.
And I just want to say, I'll come to you in just a second, Cheryl, but I want to say a special thank you to the city council members that were here, because they're not usually here. We knew that probably we would have some neighbors and some community members that would have some questions around the emergency winter shelter closing and just the announcements that have come out in the media over the last couple of days, like, will there be funding for next year? And so I just appreciate Myrta, Mike, and Gwen for being here. We appreciate it. Cheryl, did you have a question or no?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I guess to just voice a little frustration. I think most people are tired of hearing about the mill levy. We're buckled so tight as taxpayers. I think there's got to be another way to come together. I mean, I know elderly folks that are going to lose their home this time around. So, I mean, the increasing taxes are what is killing everyone. Our rents will go up. I mean, we're looking at our rents actually raising. And my dad, as a small business, keeps the rents minimal, but they're going to have to go up with this tax rise. So, yeah, just, I feel like the mill levy, the failure of the mill levy keeps being put off on the public. And I don't feel like we're being heard that we're strapped as much as we can be strapped. And many of us are out there trying to do outreach work to pitch in our fair share, but it's really hard to keep hearing about the mill levy failing. I mean, it failed and we need to move on and all work together and figure out a way out of this.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Hello, can I ask a question? Hi, my name
Sure.
is Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi. I'm wondering if the assembled group here might have any ideas about any of the pending legislation at the state level, such as in their behavioral health allocation that might be accessible for homeless services.
Actually, the Poverello Center found some funding several months ago and put together a coalition called the Montana Coalition to Solve Homelessness. And we've been working at a state level to try to get some state funding. So currently, I mean, I was in Helena. I left my house at 5 a.m. this morning to go down and testify on House Bill 380. Which would give shelters in the state $1 million a year, so $2 million for the biennium. And so that's shared across the state. So it's not a large chunk of money, but it certainly would be helpful to help us with the increase in need that we're seeing. Also, there is some money that hopefully will be appropriated in House Bill 5 out of the state surplus of $2.6 billion. We're hoping that shelters around the state can get one-time funding of $5 million to be shared amongst all the providers for some capital improvements and things like that are of high need also in our state. So we're cautiously optimistic and it's been really good. And we've had some really good dialogue and conversations with legislators. And I think we've got our fingers crossed. So if any of you, House Bill 380 has passed second reading on the House floor. So it was at the Appropriations Committee today, and the third reading will be later this week, I think Thursday or Friday. So if any of you can reach out to any legislators to encourage them, in the House to vote for this, it would be great. Thanks for bringing that up, Carrie. I don't know, Stephanie, do you want to let Hot do an update?
Yeah, Katie or Tanisha, do you guys want to talk a little bit about what's happening with Hot?
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of updates. It's kind of business as usual. Obviously, it's getting warmer out, so we are starting to see an increase in the numbers for the people that we're working with every day. We are trying to prepare and gear up as much as possible for the end of winter shelter. Our program is completely donation based though. So we're trying to get as many donations coming in as possible. We want to try to make sure that we have at least some supplies and gear for anybody who's going to be completely displaced from the shelter. So right now, I guess our our biggest ask is if anybody knows friends, family, anything like that, that might be willing to donate like sleeping bags or tents, backpacks for people to haul their items in. Anything like that is extremely helpful. Yeah, Katie, do you have anything to add?
I was just gonna say, I mean, we have been preparing in our conversations and talking to people about what their plans are. We table at J Street twice a week and are just trying to get a feel for what folks are gonna do when it closes. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that we are in those conversations and working on solutions before it closes. Yeah.
I think
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Or comments?
May I ask one more?
Sure.
It's Kevin again. To the hot team, our committed folks that are on the front lines doing so much for our homeless neighbors every day. So as you're gathering sleeping bags, backpacks, supplies for this anticipated April 10 closing with maybe more folks seeking places to camp, where are you directing folks to camp? Are you seeing like a reasonable gathering place, a park, or as we heard earlier in the meeting, perhaps will it just be along sidewalks in neighborhoods or parts of town? What do you anticipate? How are you directing folks to camp?
So technically, we are not able to tell anybody where they can and cannot go. We try to advise everybody just to try to stay off the beaten path, keep a really small footprint. We will provide them with trash bags, anything, gloves that they need to try to keep their space clean. We do try to encourage them that when they do find a place that they're going to be staying, to keep in touch with us and let us know. So then that way we can do regular visits and checks. If they need help, with any other gear or extra supplies for trying to keep their site clean, we try to provide all that and just try to make sure that we have regular contact with people.
Thanks, Tanisha. I know this is a really tough time of year for you guys. Yeah. I think, we know winter is hard, but I think for the homeless outreach team, they know where the majority, not all of their clients are, but they know where the majority of them are, and they're indoors and they can, find them easier. And when it gets warmer outside and the winter shelter closes, people are a lot of different places. And these guys, there's 5 of them, but they spend a lot of time trying to locate people, making sure they're still okay, trying to help coordinate resources. And it's a lot of hard work. So we just appreciate the hot team. I don't know, any other questions for Hot?
Or anyone else on the call? I'll just quickly share too, if anybody is interested in donating sleeping bags, backpacks, tents, any of that stuff, you can always bring them to Johnson Street. Like Jill said, Hot's office is there, my office is there, so is Sarah. Or you can drop it at the POV. And we're, always looking for any kind of survival gear for folks once the shelter is closing. So please share that word around too. I was going to ask Jill to make a legislative update, but she just did. So you guys know where we are with that. If you are interested in getting any kind of other supplies for the Poverello, we are largely donation based. Our website, thepoverello.org/donate has a list of things that we can use to help maintain the shelter, to help provide clothing, gear, supplies for folks that are staying in the shelter. So please take a peek at that and share that with friends if you're interested in helping. And we're also interested in hearing, your ideas to help this situation. It is really tough and it's happening across the country right now in every city. And unfortunately, I haven't read of any cities that have a solution to this. And so this is not something that we're just doing on a community-wide level. It's a nationwide level. So, I mean, I thank you for your participation tonight. It's really crucial and really important for the community to play a role in this. And I really appreciate everyone's time and everyone's thoughtful input. And thank you to our city council people for joining us tonight, and the hot team and the rest of the POV crew. And if there's not any other questions, everybody can have their 15 minutes back. Okay, I'll be putting this up on YouTube later tonight or tomorrow morning. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to any of us at the POV. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.